Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today I'm going to show you how to make these super cute marigold keychains. These make a super great gift, and even if you don't want it for a keychain, they also make really good bag charms. So instead of putting it on a keychain, you can just put it onto one of these clips or put it onto a clip and then clip it onto a keychain. So they are super easy, fast, and fun to make, and they're just such a lovely little gift. To make your marigold bag charms or keychains, you could use a clip or a keychain or any sort of hardware. That's optional. You will also need some yarn. I'm just using regular 4-weight worsted acrylic in whatever color you like for your marigolds, and also a little bit in green, just scraps of whatever you have laying around the house. I used a 6mm crochet hook for mine, but you could also use a 5mm. And you'll need a pair of scissors and a needle for sewing in your ends. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. So to make your marigold, leave a longer tail than you think. Make a magic ring, so make an X. Turn your hand over, short strand, long strand. Hook side facing down underneath the short strand on top of the long strand. Drag that long strand under the short strand. Point the hook towards yourself, up on the fat part of your hook. Slowly releasing your thumb or gently releasing your thumb so you can grab that long strand. Pinching everything underneath your hook, turning your hook and bringing that long strand through, and there is your magic ring. Now we're going to chain sets of 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we're going to slip stitch into the ring and around the tail. So slip stitch. Chain 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and slip stitch. So you can pause the video, keep working around, doing a chain 8, and slip stitching into the ring, making sure you're going over that tail. You want to do these loops or these chains, you need 20 of them. So pause the video and keep working around until you've made 20 of these chain 8 loops. If you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. So when you've done your 20 loops, chain 1 to secure your yarn, and cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down. And find your other tail. That's the one from the magic ring. Now we want to give the tail from the magic ring a great big pull. We want to pull it all the way closed, which is a great thing about using acrylic. You can really give it a nice big tug. Then bring it up to where your other tail is, and we can knot these. So we can give it a nice knot, a double knot, so it doesn't slip. It's nice and secure. Now, you could cut off your tails, but I like to leave these tails attached so I know where the back of the flower is when I'm ready to put on my caps. So you want to go ahead. You need 2 of these for your bag charm or your keychain. To make the cap of your flower, we're going to start by leaving about a 14-inch tail and then making a magic ring. Put that yarn over your non-dominant hand and make your magic ring. So just hold it down on your ring finger with your thumb, wrap it around 2 fingers, making an X, and bring it underneath your thumb as well, just to hold it in place. Turn your hand over and you have a short strand and a long strand. Grab your crochet hook, hook side facing down, underneath the short strand on top of the long strand. Bring the long strand underneath the short strand and point that hook towards yourself. Release your thumb a little bit so that long strand can slide. Turn your hook away from yourself and grab that long strand. Pinch everything underneath your hook. Turn your hook and bring it through, and there is your magic ring. with a 14-inch tail. Chain 2, 1 and 2. Now into the center of the ring going over that tail, we want to do 6 double crochets. So super easy, 6 double crochets. So there is our 6 double crochets. You can pull that tail to shrink it shut and just rotate your work a little bit so we can see that first stitch we made. So we're not counting our chain 2. We're going to go into that very first double crochet we made. So it's that stitch right there. So just slide your hook in. Put some tension on your yarn. We want to make sure we're just going to do a small slip stitch. So using some tension, pulling on your tail, 1 little slip stitch to join that up into a little cap, and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn. Now you want to leave just a normal tail, maybe a little bit longer, about 6 inches, and pull your yarn up and your hook through and snug that down to secure. Now we can flip our cap inside out, so our pretty stitches are facing out, and there is the cap. So that is the first cap. Now we have to make 1 more cap, but a little bit different. To start the second cap, you want to leave about a 24-inch tail. So all that yarn is our tail. So leaving your long tail, we want to make a magic ring. So making your X, wrapping around the 3 fingers, turning it the other way, upside down, hook under the short, on top of the long, bringing it through, pointing it towards yourself, slowly releasing, grabbing the long strand, pinching everything under your hook, bringing it through, and chaining 2, 1 and 2. Now this is the same as the first cap, 6 double crochets into the center of the ring, taking care to go over your tail. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now we're going to pull that big long tail to really close up that magic ring, just like that. And now we're going to look for that first double crochet we made. So not the chain, we're ignoring the chain. We're going to go straight into that very first double crochet right there. That is where we're going to slip stitch. Just pop your hook in, shrink up your yarn, and make 1 slip stitch, and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Now you can cut this tail, and just a normal tail, just a few inches to sew in later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down. Inside out your circle. So now you have a cap with a long tail and a cap with a short tail. Now 1 marigold is getting a short cap and 1 marigold is getting the cap with the long tail. We're going to start with the marigold with the short tails. So now we know what side is up or the back side for our marigolds. Just cut those tails. And we want to thread the center tail, that tail that's coming up from the magic ring, we want to thread that tail onto your needle. Now just fold all those petals down. So we have the center of our flower right there. And just slide your hook in from one, or your needle actually, slide your needle in from one side to the other, making sure you're getting through a sensible amount of yarn. And before it's tight, turn that cap up. We want to make sure we're going back down into the center. We want our needle coming out the middle or the center of that magic ring. It doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere close. And now we can pull that tail and shrink that cap on to our marigold. Just smoothing it out as we pull, and that really cinches it down nice along your marigold. Go underneath a strand of yarn and back through that loop. We want to knot that so it doesn't loosen. And now we can just sew in that tail. As you're sewing in your flower, just make sure you're going into those petals and coming back out the other side. And then you can just cut that tail off. And you want to do the same thing with the other tail. So thread it and work your way from one side to the other. So keeping your flower nice and folded down so that cap stays down on the petals. From one side out to the other. Then skipping over a stitch and back through. So just repeat this until your tail is sewn in. So there is your first marigold with the little cap on. Now we are ready to do the same thing with the long tail cap. So find those two tails that you knotted. We can cut them off now. We just want that part facing up. So we know where the back of our flower is. Grab your cap. We want to make sure it's facing out, so our pretty stitch is facing out. And thread that long tail from the center. We want to thread this one onto our needle. So fold all those petals down so we have a nice center. Like that. And we want to go in from one side and out the other side of that center. And then before we put our cap all the way on, back down through the cap, coming out the center. Right there. Now we can pull it nice and snug, just like we did on the first side. And smooth that cap down onto the flower. Now thread your short tail. We want to sew on this cap while we are here. I'm going to get this cap finished. So just pinch all those petals so that our cap can be down along the sides. And just go in where you are and out the other side, making sure you're going through the petals and catching that cap as well. Jumping over a stitch, back down the other side, and making sure that cap is also where your needle's going to be. And just repeat that until your cap is stitched on and your tail is sewn in. And then cut that tail off. Now make sure our lid is nice and snug, our cap, so pull it nice and tight and thread the long tail again. Go underneath a couple strands of yarn just very nearby that long tail. And pull it through, but not all the way. We want to be leaving a loop. Just like that. That loop is for our crochet hook. So pop your crochet hook into that loop and shrink it down. We want to be crocheting right by that hook, not up on the fat part. We want this to be nice and tiny. We want to do tiny chains for 2 chains. So as tiny as you could make that chain, you want to do 2 really small ones. Exactly what you're not supposed to do when you're making a chain. So 2 small chains like that. Now we can keep chaining just regular. We want to chain a total of 25. So 3, 4, 5. So there is my chain 25. I still have my needle threaded onto my yarn. I'm just going to bring it through. But if you don't have your needle still threaded, just pull your hook up and your yarn through. It will be fine, and then thread your needle again. Grab your second marigold, or your first marigold actually, and we're just going to sew our yarn or attach our yarn on both sides of the center. So a little bit of yarn on both sides. Bring it through and back. We want this chain to be starting right at the top of this marigold as well. So they're matching. And you can pull this one a bit secure, nice and tight. We don't want any gap between the chain and our flower. And then just sew in that tail as well. Cut off your tail, and there are your 2 marigolds. So you could leave it like this, and you could just wrap it around a bag and just kind of poke it through to stay around the handle of the bag, just like that. Or you could use a keychain, or you could use one of these clips. So for mine, I'm using one of those clips, and I want my flowers a little bit off center. You could have yours hanging equally if you wanted to. I'm just going to have mine a little bit off. So find how you want yours to hang and just pinch that part of the chain and poke it through whatever you're attaching it to. Even if you're attaching it straight to a handbag or a handle, do the same thing around the handle. So just slide it all the way up to the flowers and grab each flower and bring it through. And pull it down. And before you make it tight, you can adjust it, so pull whichever strand you want to be longer. And there is your super cute marigold bag charm or keychain. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.